your connections matter. Your relationships matter. And the longest running study on happiness comes from Harvard. And it says the quality of your connections is what dictates the level of satisfaction in life and the level of happiness that you experience in life.
Mm.
So be intentional around your relationships. Be intentional around connecting with people who fill your bucket.
Hello, and welcome to the Connectedness Podcast. Just as you might have guessed, I talk about connection and connectedness on this podcast, our connection with everything in the world around us. Whether you see it or not, we're all connected, and it doesn't matter if it's our dog, our cat, our God, our body. And I'll also talk about some more abstract connections like our career or our land, our community, our emotions, your body. Life is all about connection, so the sooner we recognize that, the sooner we can have an easier, more meaningful life. I will talk about these connections through different lenses, things like synchronicities and coincidences, or just everyday little bits of magic and miracles that we usually dismiss. It's really important that we pay attention to all of this so we can live an easier, more meaningful life. So welcome to the show. I'm your host, Karen Cleveland. Welcome back to the show, everyone. So great to have you here. I'm really excited to introduce you today to my guest, and you'll see why as we begin talking about things. But Billy Lahr is an international living and mindfulness coach, certified personal trainer, former educator, and serial overthinker. That sounds familiar. Billy is also the host of the Mindful Midlife Crisis, which I love, a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Billy spent 21 years as an educator, but experienced burnout due to budding mental health concerns, social media harassment from students, and lack of job satisfaction. So in 2021, Billy left his job as Dean of Students in order to travel the world in search of meaningful experiences and community. And I need to ask you about that too. I have a lot of things I need to ask you about, Billy.
Wonderful.
Since then, he's been a GPS for those seeking purpose and passion by helping them identify strengths, explore curiosities, synergize with their crew, and cultivate consistency, discipline, patience, and self compassion. Welcome to the show, Billy. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, good. So there's so many ways to go with your experience and what you're doing now. And just because I didn't actually realize this till I read your bio right before the show. So you quit intentionally to travel? Is that what you did, to travel and to find meaningful experiences?
No, so, I've never been married, no kids. I don't have the same responsibilities that other people have.
Okay.
And, I'd been working in education for a long time, and I knew that I wanted to take a leave at some point so that I could travel because my life circumstances afforded me that opportunity. Now, I did have a dog, and I always said that when the dog crossed the rainbow bridge, that's when I would
Yeah.
start taking action to start traveling a bit. And she passed away in April of 2020. So I had a full year to plan a leave. So I had
Okay.
the opportunity to take a personal leave from my job. So I did that, and then in the midst of that, I just recognized that I wasn't going to be able to transition back into that position again, and so I resigned and continued traveling. And I thought that I was just going to do it for a year. But then when I got to Seoul, South Korea, met this amazing group of people, and I felt very connected to them. I felt very connected to the city, so much so that when I left Seoul in July of 2022, I went back to the States. I sold all my stuff and I went back to Seoul for another 3 months. And I'm like, okay, well, while I'm over here, I might as well go to Thailand. I might as well go to Singapore. I
Mhm,
might as well go to
mhm,
Vietnam. I might as well go to Japan. Japan and Korea were number one and number two on my bucket list of places to visit.
okay,
And I wasn't able to visit them in 2021 and early 2022 because of the pandemic.
right,
So once they were opened up, I'm like, I'm seizing this opportunity right here to continue traveling. So I mean, when I talk about meaningful experiences, like I've done that, but for me, really, what's been the most meaningful experience are the people that I've met and the connections that I've made during this time in learning of their stories
yeah,
and really synergizing with them so that it elevates my experience to a point where I'm just like, oh, wow, I feel so connected. I feel so at home here where kind of wherever I visit. My therapist said, the one thing about you is you can go anywhere in the world and just blend in. She
mm,
said, that's a real skill that you have. I was like, oh, huh. That's a good point. Cause I do feel like I can make connections, but I'm intentional about the connections that I make too
yeah,
while I'm traveling. So all that to say that I'm back in Seoul, South Korea again. And every time I come here, more opportunities present themselves to me.
oh,
And I'm finding that, all right, this just may be the place for me in this stage in my life. I lived in Minnesota my entire life up
wow,
until I started traveling. So now it's a different experience for me. And this experience has really opened my eyes to the importance of making the right connections with the right people. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm financially successful in any way, shape, or form, but I do feel richer in my life experiences.
right, and, I mean, and the bottom line is that's really probably what's most important, right, is not money, but how we feel. So, when you talk about being a GPS for other people seeking, purpose or passion, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I am very anti follow your passions. I think that is
Okay,
complete and utter nonsense when people suggest, oh, follow your passions. No, no. When people say that, they forget the amount of work that goes into that. So when you follow your passions, if you start with follow your passions, the likelihood of burnout increases significantly. So I tell people, if you want to quote unquote follow your passions, there are 7 things you need to develop before you get to that point. So the first thing that you want to look at is what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what needs do you need filled in your life?
mm,
If we're able to take a look at that, then you're able to figure out, okay, this is where I'm good. So I'm going to make sure that I invest in these skills and in these habits and in these behaviors and these characteristics. But then I also want to make sure that I minimize, you're never going to be able to completely eradicate, but minimize the things that are getting in the way. That's why it's so important to take a look at weaknesses as well as needs. What fills you up?
right,
So that's step one. Step two, let's explore your curiosities. What are some things that light you up when you think about them? What are some things that make you go, I want to learn more about that? What are some challenges that you say, all right, this is hard, but I like the hard. And I want to learn more about how to master this. And I think that's kind of where pride and ego come in and actually are good things in that way because you're saying, oh, the ego in me doesn't want to fail at this. So I'm going to continue working at this.
oh, right,
And then you want to also take a look at your community, your crew. Who are the people around you that can provide access to ways to amplify the skills that you are learning as you explore your curiosity? Or who are the people who will cheerlead you and say, oh, I really like what you're doing right here? So
Mhm.
that community is really important. I think once you have those 3 things in place, then you found your purpose. All right. So now you know what your purpose is. You know what gives you meaning.
Oh,
But then how do we turn purpose into passion? Well, you need consistency, discipline, patience, and self compassion. If you have those 4 things, then your purpose becomes passion. You don't start with passion. Passion is a byproduct of the strengths and the curiosities and the consistency and the discipline that you put in to what it is that you are good at. That's where you should start, is figuring out, what am I good at and what am I curious about? And then you can turn that into a passion. Another thing that I think people get wrong too is that your passion doesn't have to be your job. It really doesn't. A job can be a job that funds your passion.
yeah.
So I think when people say, "Oh, you get to work I get to, I should want to be passionate about my work," necessarily.
Right.
Is there something that you enjoy doing outside of your 9 to 5 or whatever your schedule is that lights you up? And you can commit to that on a regular, consistent basis. And my guess is that if it does light you up, you're gonna be disciplined about doing it. Learning an instrument, learning a language.
Right.
For me, it was the podcast. Like, like, nobody makes money podcasting. We like to think
Right.
that we're going to get the big time sponsorships and that sort of thing, but
Right.
I pay to podcast. And I do that because I really enjoy the conversations that I'm having with my guests. Now, I've been doing it for 3 years, and I'm actually shutting down the podcast for a bunch of different reasons.
Mm,
But I think the biggest reason is I'm moving in a different direction now.
yeah.
Like, the story that I started telling 3 years ago is not the same story that I am telling now. And I feel like I wanna move in a different direction, but I also feel really proud of what I have accomplished.
Right.
So now I'm going through that process of figuring out, okay, what is my new purpose? Before the purpose was the podcast. What gives me meaning is helping people navigate the complexities and possibilities of life. Now, the podcast helped people navigate the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. So it was more focused towards people in midlife. But now I'm thinking to myself, who really would benefit from my experiences as a certified mindfulness meditation coach? And what knowledge, what experiences do I have to share in that? So I'm thinking about educators because I worked in education for
Mhm.
21 years. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking about digital nomads because I've been doing that for the last 2 years.
Right.
And so, how can I provide mindful experiences? How can I provide mental health support for educators, particularly principals and superintendents? Because I often think they get overlooked in this because I mean, we need to focus on teachers, we need to focus on students,
Yeah.
but principals and superintendents and HR staff in education systems are making really, really difficult decisions too.
Yeah.
And I think that they are often villainized, especially I was a dean of students, so I was kind of in the middle because I was on a teacher contract, but I was viewed as administration, but
Right.
administration didn't view me as administration. So
Oh,
I was in this weird limbo and, you know, you're the bad guy. So there's a lot of toll that is taken on you emotionally, physically, mentally when you're making really difficult decisions, and to assume that making those difficult decisions over and over again doesn't have an impact on your well-being
right.
is short-sighted. So for people out there who are administrators, superintendents, I want to provide that support for you because I was a teacher for 15 years. I was a dean of student for 6. I know what that's like from both ends. So I want to work with that population, but then at the same time, too, I think about the struggles I've had the last 2 years as a digital nomad. I think we romanticize this idea of work and travel,
Yeah.
but there is a lot of isolation that comes with that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of culture shock that comes with that. I mean, when I first came to Korea, not knowing the language at all, and
Right.
then at least when I go to Mexico, it's in Spanish, but there are root words, and I having taught English, I can at least pick out the root words. I can make sense of it.
Yeah.
But I've had to teach myself Hangul on the subway and be like, okay, it's almost like you're code switching. Like, okay, this letter here in Hangul translate to this Roman letter right here.
Yeah.
So when I'm on the subway, I just stare at
Yeah.
the subway stops and learn the alphabet like that. So there are little tips like that that I can offer to people as a certified meditation mindfulness coach.
Yeah, I actually did that in Greece as well. I realized I didn't know how to speak Greek after I got there. So I started really paying attention to listening to the bus announcements and looking at it. Of course, a lot of them spoke English, but not everyone. Everyone did. So you're kind of going through this process now yourself. So it sounds like passions or purpose as you define it might change over time.
They do for everybody. The same things that I was passionate about when I was 25 are not the same things that I'm passionate
Right.
about now, 20 years later. So I think too, we too often, we, for me, I think of passions. A lot of times when we think of passions, it's really just hobby, right? It's just
Mm,
something that you're interested in doing. Maybe you pick it up here and there. But
okay.
if you're turning it into a passion, then it's consistent, it's discipline. You need to be patient with yourself. You especially need to be self-compassionate because you're not going to be good at the beginning. And you might not even be good after a few years of it, but
Mm,
you get incrementally better with that discipline and that consistency. The same can be said for routines. I'm a big routine guy. I like morning routines. I worked in schools when bells told me when to start and stop things. So
yeah.
I'm of that regimented mindset, and I liked having that. The being a digital nomad, having a little bit more free time, I've actually had to create routines for me and say, well, this is what your morning routine is going to look like because that sets me up for more success throughout the day.
So did you say you're a mindfulness and meditation coach? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, yep, yeah. So a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. A
Okay.
lot of times those two things go hand in hand. When I think of mindfulness, though, I think of moments throughout the day where you can be aware of what is
Mhm.
present. And then the challenge is doing that without judgment. You're simply being a witness to your experience. You are being an observer to what is going on. Now, meditation is the act of, you think of it like exercise, but it is the act of meditating, right?
Mhm.
So meditation is a form of mindfulness, but you can go for mindfulness walks. I often lead mindful eating sessions. I did an episode with my friend Matt Hazard where he is a coffee aficionado.
Mm,
And I asked him, when was the last time you actually sat and enjoyed your coffee, where you drank it mindfully, where
right.
you activated all 5 senses before even taking a sip? You smelled it, you felt the heat come off the cup, you savored the aroma, and the aroma went through the back of your nostrils, down your throat, so you could actually just taste it that way. You could see the color of it, and taking in all of those things, and then also extending gratitude for the work that it took to get from bean to cup, because there
Right.
are a lot of steps in between there. So that way, when you actually take that first sip, you really, really savor the flavor of it. You really savor the way it feels on the tongue and it hits, different taste buds throughout the mouth. And you experience that coffee differently. And I'm
Yeah.
not telling people that they need to do that for the entire cup. I would challenge people to do that for the entire
Yeah.
cup, but maybe you do that for the first 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a mindfulness practice that people can do every single morning for
Right.
3 to 5 minutes. You could do it with your breakfast. I
Yeah.
will tell people too that if you commute to work in in your car, Before you get out of your car, you turn the car off and you just sit with your breath for 3 to 5 minutes. And you become aware of what feelings are present, what emotions, what thoughts are present, what sensations are present. Those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, where are you feeling those in the body? Checking in with the somatic experience, because then when you go into work, you know what you are bringing with you. And
Mm,
then in doing so, you're able to respond as opposed to react from emotion. You're able to respond mindfully as opposed to react from emotion.
right, right. I can imagine that mindfulness practice, if everyone did that, I don't know, before every meal or before every workday, that would create a change, wouldn't it?
Well, what they show is that practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation, what it can do is develop the gray matter in your prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex is what regulates emotion. But not only that, but it also cools and shrinks the amygdala. And the amygdala is our fight, flight, or fright response. So it's our animal brain, it's our reptile brain. And it's what keeps us alive. We
Yeah,
need to have an active amygdala. What we don't want is an overactive amygdala because that's what turns fear, which is legitimate, where you are feeling a threat of danger because there is a bear in front of you,
right.
to anxiety. And anxiety is a perceived threat and a perceived fear when in actuality it is a stressor. So, stress is good. We should have stress. But when we take stress and we amplify it and we overactivate our amygdala, that's what creates anxiety. Now, again, anxiety is a normal emotion and anxiety is healthy. But do we want to live in an overly anxious state of mind? No, we don't, because then we're constantly in survival mode. We don't need to be. We don't need to feel like we're in constant survival mode. We can recognize that, oh, I'm feeling very anxious right now, and this is very normal to feel anxious. So, how can I manage this anxiety so that it can work for me and not be a detriment where it won't paralyze me in fear or paralyze me to the point where I can't make a decision or I can't even move because I'm having a panic attack?
Yeah, yeah. What brought you to the whole mindfulness meditation movement or practice?
Yeah. So, I would say 10 years ago, I kind of hit rock bottom with my mental health. I was really struggling with anxiety, and that was manifesting into depression, and that was manifesting into suicidal ideation. And very luckily, my best friend has his PhD in forensic neuropsychology. So I guess I was using him as my therapist, but
Yeah,
I was having these conversations with him, and he's like, listen, what you are telling me, you need to go and work with a therapist.
mm,
He's like, This is some serious stuff. You need to go and work with a therapist." And I'm glad that he said that because I think oftentimes we use our friends as therapists, but our friends are well-meaning and they're going to tell us what we want to
right,
hear.
right.
But the other thing is they have their own stuff going on that they're trying to sort through.
Yeah,
So investing in a therapist or investing in a coach is investing in yourself. I don't even think you need to get to the point where you are having anxiety or depression or suicidal ideation in order to work with a therapist. If you are having anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, I strongly encourage you to work with a therapist. But working with a therapist is it's kind of like changing the oil. Even if you're feeling good, like your car might be running good, but it's changing the oil in that,
yeah.
right? You need to change the oil every now and
Maintenance.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of maintenance. But when I started working with my therapist, her name is Mindy Ben Dixon. I always like giving her a shout out because I will say that she introduced me to mindfulness, and
Mm,
mindfulness not only changed my life, but it most likely saved it as well. So she started giving me mindfulness exercises to do at home. We would do them in the therapy office. And what I found was that the intensity of the anxiety that I was experiencing and the intensity of the depression that I was feeling was getting less and less. It wasn't going away completely, but it was getting less intense. And I was able to recognize the somatic experience of it when it appeared in my head than where I would feel it in my body.
Mm,
So then I was able to say, "Oh, you're feeling this in your stomach right here.
mm,
This is kind of an indicator that you're feeling a bit anxious." Now, we don't know what is causing this anxious feeling right now, but if we can at least keep it where it's at, we're not trying to shove it down, but we're keeping it where it's at. And let's breathe into this. And now that we're aware of it, we can come from a mindset of responding as opposed to reacting or being impulsive. And I would get these anxiety attacks when I was standing up at the board talking about Romeo and Juliet.
mm,
And then when I started recognizing, oh, hey, this is starting to bubble up a little bit, then I was able to do self-talk while also teaching. So that
mm,
was a really helpful strategy. So much so that the students that I had as ninth graders, I had again as 10th graders. And I remember clearly one of them saying to me earlier in the school year, "Mr. Lahr, it seems like you're in a better mood this year." And
oh,
that is what sealed the deal for me, like, "Oh, this is working. So I need to continue
yeah,
with this practice."
yeah.
And one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me is, "Billy, when you're excited about something, you want everybody else to be excited about it too." I think that's why I enjoy being a teacher. So I thought, well, gosh, if mindfulness can help a nut job like me, I'm sure there are other people out there who are as high strung, high anxiety, high energy, who would benefit from cultivating a mindfulness practice. I often tell people that I, I practice mindfulness so that I can be this level of obnoxious, because if I didn't, I would be out of control. So I started learning more about mindfulness. I started taking courses about mindfulness, and now I'm a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. And one of the tenets of mindfulness is gratitude. And
Mhm.
I feel like this coming round full circle, where mindfulness has given me so much, it's my responsibility then to extend the benefits of mindfulness and teach the benefits of mindfulness to others as a way of extending gratitude, not just to the practice, but also to Mindy Ben Dixon.
Nice. And how do you do that? I mean, you're in Korea. Where are most of your so are they do you call them students or clients or
Yeah, I just participants, clients, I
okay,
suppose. Yeah,
okay.
it's I'm not sure what to call 'em. Clients feels like so
So
transactional, but I
yeah.
guess it is
Yeah.
it to some degree. What I do is I lead virtual meditate and mingle sessions. So I do this every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Central Time. And if people go to www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com, you can sign up for these sessions. But what we do is for about the first 5 minutes, we just do a check in and I ask them, how were you mindful this week? How did you live intentionally this week? What's something that you practiced in the last week from when we last discussed? And then I set up a about a 10 to 15-minute guided practice. And it's a guided practice, meaning that I'm walking them through
Mhm.
the practice. We're not just sitting looking at a blank screen for 10, 15 minutes in silence. It's an actual practice. So we start with a grounding breath and then we move into the intention of the practice. And then after that, we have a discussion about what came up for you during this meditation. What was challenging during this meditation? How can you use what you learned from this conversation, from this meditation, moving forward that you can practically apply in your everyday life? So that's what those look like. And I really enjoy doing those. And as a new solo entrepreneur, I'm learning just how difficult this is.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking to work with people one on one too. And I've got a variety of different programs that I have. I have a couple courses that I have too. So that's how I'm sharing that with the world.
Yeah. That's fantastic. You called it what and mingle?
Meditate and mingle. I
Meditate
need to
and
eat
mingle.
yeah, I needed kind of a clever name, so I'm like, "Oh, what do we got going on here?" Well, okay, we're doing mindfulness and meditating, and we're also doing conversation. Meditate and mingle, that seems to work, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. A good thing to do on a Monday night.
Yeah.
So I know you've also talked about to-do lists. What's important about ditching those and what's the replacement for those?
Yeah, I guess I look at it this way that to-do lists just keep you busy. So I created this thing called a CHIPS list. And so CHIPS stands for complete. And these are the 3 to 5 things that need to get completed, not things that need to get progressed, but they need to get done today that you can cross off your list and say, this task is done.
Mm,
So about 3 to 5 things that you need to get done today. That's your complete. And then the H stands for hooray, because you should celebrate when you get these things done. So, what does a celebration look like, Louis? It's just saying, hey, I'm going to watch this episode of this show that I want to watch,
right,
or I am going to call my friend here and have a conversation with them and catch up with them, or maybe it's a date night, something along those lines. I always advise against making the hooray revolve around alcohol or food, because that creates a tricky relationship with alcohol and food. I don't think that we should treat alcohol and food as a treat.
right,
I'm someone who, like, I go through what I call my alcohol sabbatical. So, I would do sober school years where I didn't drink from Labor Day until the end of the school year. So, that's kinda my relationship with alcohol. I just feel better when I'm not drinking alcohol, so I really don't treat myself to alcohol ever anymore, and I'll eat whatever I want. So, that's never my hooray. Usually my hooray is doing something where I meet up with a friend or catch up with a friend or something along those lines, something that's social.
right.
And then the IPS means in progress or start. So if you have time, if you have energy, and you're thinking to yourself, "Ah, I'm going to carry on this momentum from what I've completed today, and I'm going to progress some things, or I'm going to start some things." That's what you can do. And knowing that whatever is in progress or start eventually is going to get to that C list. Now, you can do that weekly or you can do that daily. Daily might seem like a lot, but weekly is maybe a bit more manageable. So, taking a look at what is it that I need to complete this week. These things have to get done this week. And you can even put down what day those things need
Yeah,
to get done. And that might be more than 3 to 5 things, might be a list of 10. What are the 10 things that need to get done this week? Which day am I going to complete them? What do I want to do to celebrate throughout this week? What are things that I'm looking forward to this week where, in a
yeah,
sense, I am treating myself? And then what's in progress that I can move along? What are some things that I can start along the way? I think doing that weekly is way more manageable than it is daily. I know that I struggle with it daily, but if I sit down and I say, these are the 10 things I need to do this week, I almost always get those things completed by the deadline.
mm, that's nice. So you feel it's more productive in a it helps a person just do it more. Is that
For me, it creates deadlines
okay?
because, like I said, a to-do list, well, I could do it, but I would rather change to do to done.
Yeah, yeah,
Is it done?
yeah,
And if it's not, like, when does it need to get done? Because, like, if a report needs to get done, if you add a report to your to-do list, well, I could just work on it and, hey, well, did it, but is
that's
it
yeah,
done? So
yeah.
I kinda look at it that way. I know it's semantics, but I also taught English for 15
It,
years,
it,
so words matter.
yeah, words do matter. I agree. Have a lot of new to-do lists every day with some things just transferring over and over and over again. So I understand that. I'll try the CHIPS method. So if you had an opportunity to speak to everyone in the world, what would you like them to know?
Wow, what a question.
Yeah.
What would I want them to know? I would say this. I would want them to know a couple things. One thing that I think is really important for them to know is that your connections matter. Your relationships matter. And the longest running study on happiness comes from Harvard, and it says the quality of your connections is what dictates the level of satisfaction in life and the level of happiness that you experience in life.
Mm,
So be intentional around your relationships. Be intentional around connecting with people who fill your bucket.
yeah.
And if you're feeling burnt out, there is a strong likelihood that whoever is around you, you're allowing them to zap your energy.
Mm,
So then you've kind of got two choices. You can replace the people around you. Now, if it's the work, it might mean that you need to get a different job,
right.
or you learn a strategy or skill around how to take care of yourself amidst that energy so that it doesn't impact you as intensely. And then you're able to withstand that energy a little bit more so that you can make a more mindful plan to pivot when the time comes and respond to what's going on around you. So I think that that's something that I would say. And along those same lines, this whole idea that other people's opinions don't matter, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. Other people's opinions do matter. They
Yeah.
are very important. But I do think that if you wouldn't turn to them for advice, then you shouldn't listen to their criticism.
Mm,
So I think that's really important.
right.
Yes, other people's opinions matter, but are they the opinions of people that you would turn to for advice? Those are the people that you should stop and listen to and say, oh, okay. And then you can process it and say, how much does this apply to me? And is this practical to where I am?
Right.
And really kind of sit with that. I'll give you an example. Like Dr. Andrew Huberman, I mean, he's wildly popular these days and for good reason. This is a really intelligent dude.
Hmm.
Now, he has this morning routine and it's kind of based on what his research suggests, like getting sunlight and getting water in and this, that, and the other, and getting a workout in, getting movement in. But is that practical for me when I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning, in the winter of Minnesota when the
Right.
sun isn't up until 8 o'clock and I'm already been at work for an hour?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't apply to me. But is his advice still good? Yes, it is. It's still good advice, but does it apply to me? No. So I think just kind of making sure that if haters are going to hate, so if you
Right.
wouldn't turn to them for advice, there's no need for you to listen to what they have to say. If you would turn to them for advice and they're naysaying, then get curious because more than likely, the reason that they're naysaying is because they're just concerned about you, that they care about you. They don't want to see you suffer. They don't want to see you hurt. And so g- get to that, boil it down to that,
Yeah.
and then do everything you can to reassure them and say, hey, I know you care, but I've thought about this and here's my plan. And if you don't have a plan, then guess what? Their concerns are valid.
Yeah.
So get a plan. And so you can alleviate some of their concerns too, because that's going to benefit you in the long run too. So, very long winded answer to what I would tell the world, but I have a microphone and a soapbox, so I'm going to use it.
Exactly. That's perfect. That curiosity is really important because I think when a naysayer, if I talk to a sibling or a family member and they start telling me what a bad idea it is, it's usually out of concern or they don't fully understand what I'm trying to tell them, one or the other. But yeah, the curiosity is like, why are they responding that way? And why am I reacting that way? So,
Yeah, and that's where just cultivating that awareness and that
yeah,
presence of, "Oh, I'm starting to feel defensive right here. So
yeah,
now that I know that I'm defensive, I can respond to this as opposed to react and get into an argument about it." So you're able to slow things down and recognize, "All right, I recognize that this feeling right now, this is defensiveness. And this is coming from, you know, they don't understand me, they don't understand me." Well, if they don't understand me, what's some more information that I can share with them?
right.
And the thing is, live in non-closure. It's okay to agree to disagree.
Yeah,
I do that all the time. If I feel like I have emphatically made my point and the other person still doesn't see my point, then I just say, "All right, let's agree to disagree. I hear your side and you make some valid points, not enough to convince me that I'm going to change my mind, but I respect your opinion. You've given me something to think about. And so clearly, you are also not in agreement. I have not swayed you in any way, but we can agree to disagree." And if we
yeah,
learn to say things like that more often, I think we would have less divide, not only in this country, but just contention in our relationships too. Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners wouldn't be so awkward.
yeah, that's true, and that's what's coming up here. So, you have given a lot of ideas out there, kinda back to the what do you wish everyone knew. If there was one thing that people could start doing to help shift their life in some way, and I know there's so many, but what's your favorite tip to give?
For me, what's helped me the most, and it's easy to say mindfulness, but really what mindfulness has done is it's given me an opportunity to slow down and be less impulsive and less reactive. So bringing awareness to what is present really will make a difference in how we communicate and how we respond to what's going on around us. Because, I mean, there are things I'm very sensitive to sound, very sensitive to sound. So just little noises will irritate me, and I can be irritated, but I also can be irritated without projecting that irritation
Mm,
to others, right? I'm
right,
not projecting it outward. And I
right,
can just I can recognize that, "Oh, is this a sound I can change? No, it's not. Is this a sound I can ask somebody to change? No, it's not. All right. So how long am I going to endure it?" And I can endure it and just say, "All right, I'm here and that's going to be part of my experience." And so now that I've accepted that that's part of my experience, it might get in the way of being present, but it's not going to affect me to the point where I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're like, "Mm, never want to have a conversation with that guy." And that has taken work. That has
yeah,
taken work because I have let emotion, agitation, irritation, I have let that get the better of me to the point where people are like, "Oh, I'm not really a fan of that guy."
right,
And, that's still going to happen from time to time, but I just want it to happen fewer times.
mhm,
And I want those moments of irritation and agitation to not be as intense and take away from my overall experience and the overall relationships that I have with others around me too.
good point, that's fabulous, thank you. Well, our time has quickly passed and come to an end here, so it's time for me to close the show. So, where can people find you? I know you did mention a website earlier, but go ahead and let people know what's available and how to find you.
Yeah, so the three most prolific places you can find me are on Instagram, mindful_midlife_crisis. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Billy Lahr, Lahr. And you can go to the website, www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com. I have free resources there. My courses are there. The Meditate and Mingle sessions are there. I would love to see people join the Meditate and Mingle sessions. We have people from around the world who join those sessions. It's a small group right now, if you're like, I'd like to learn more about meditation, or I'm not a big fan of meditating in a group, reach out to me at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com and just say, hey, I heard you talking to Reverend Karen. I'd like to learn more about some of the things that you've got going on. And I actually am curious who hears these episodes too and what your takeaways were. So please feel
Yeah.
free to reach out. I assure you that I will respond.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. And of course, those links will be in the show notes. But for those of you that are driving or running right now, that's what the sites are. And by the way, what a fabulous name, Mindful Midlife Crisis. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
kudos on that one. So thank you for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Billy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And listeners, thank you for being here. And I look forward to connecting with you later. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to head over to revkarenpodcast.com. That's REVKAREN podcast.com. There you're going to find the tools for finding more meaning and happiness in your own life. Plus, if you have a story that you want to share with me, either on or off the air, be sure to look for that form. Make sure you follow me so you get notified when new episodes drop. And also, I'd love to connect with you in my Facebook group, Connectedness with Rev Karen. So head over to revkarenpodcast.com. I hope to see you there.